But yeah, I want everyone to have chickens, but maybe chickens aren't for everyone. Throw out all the information I could possibly think of, so that you guys can make the best decision. So I've had chickens since 2010. I got them in the spring. And it was actually because my husband wanted a new golf driver. And I was like, well, if you get something, I want something. So I told him that if he were to get a really nice driver, I wanted chickens. So that's what started this whole journey. And the reason I got chickens was I feel like I've always been a farm girl at heart. And I love chickens. Like, we'd drive out in the country and I'd be obsessed. Any farms that had chickens wandering around the property or anywhere, I'd be like, oh my gosh, slow down. I wanted to look at the chickens. And every time we'd go to the feed store and see the baby chicks, I just fantasized about having chickens one day. And actually, we got chickens a year before they were legal in the city. So the city ordinances changed the next year, allowing you to have 6 hens in the city limits. And I feel like by then I had 6 hens. I started out with 4. One of them did get attacked by a neighbor's dog, probably that next year. So, you know, there was a huge learning curve to keeping them safe and like all the things. And then I got 3 more the next year. And then I got 2 more the year after that. So I was already up to like 7 or 8 by the time we actually moved to the country. We actually converted a rabbit hutch to house my chickens. And the problem, it worked great, but the problem with the rabbit hutch is it was a double decker. So it had the bottom and then a ramp to get into the bottom and then a ramp to get up into the top where the roosts were. So just training the chickens to go up the ramp and then up the other ramp, it's a little bit harder for them to go through a ramp that comes up the floor versus just a straight ramp that goes straight into the front of a place. So like my chicken coops here have ramps that go straight into the door instead of up into the floor. That's a little bit more difficult for them to learn, but they eventually did. It just took some perseverance on my part to continue to put them into the coop every night so that they could learn how to come out of the coop, and then one day they learned how to go back in. That was the first coop, was a converted rabbit hutch. The second coop, because I had more chickens, was a converted dog house. So it was just a big dog house. We actually still have it today. We house our roosters in it now sometimes. We went and put roost bars in it and a nest box. And that was my second chicken coop. We had an unfortunate thing happen right before we moved to the country. So all my city chickens got killed. And part of that was obviously a little bit more being lackluster on my part, because other than that first time, the first year I ever had chickens, I had a dog get in my yard. A dog that I'd never seen before and I didn't know, so I had no idea whose dog it was. It never came back. The last time we had a dog get into our yard was actually because we lived next to a rental house and they moved in like that weekend, and before we even met them or knew who they were, their husky was in our yard and had eaten all of our chickens. So we had moved, that happened at like in the fall, probably like September, October, and we moved in May. So I started over my flock. And then we moved out to the country. We planned on getting chicks. And so we had a neighbor that had built a house. We used his scrap wood with permission to build our first coop, which is this one over here. And then we just kind of had a secure coop. And then the run was just kind of like thrown up chicken wire and netting. But we had to lock them in the coop every night because the run wasn't safe enough to not be predator proof, but the coop was safe enough to be predator proof because out here in the country, hawks, coyotes, raccoons, foxes, weasels, you name it. Oh, even owls. So there's a lot more predators out here, and so we had to make sure that whatever we built was going to be safe for them, so that we could get to the point where we had a secure run as well. So now we have a secure coop and a secure run. The run has the chicken wire that comes out like a foot from the bottom, so nothing can dig into the coop. And then we have secured on the pasture side is all corrugated metal so that nothing can get through. And then the front side that faces the house, because it's a little bit more protected because it's facing the house, it's just chicken wire and hardware cloth. The hardware cloth is the second rendition. I would go with that over the chicken wire. The chicken wire is good, but you want to get the smaller circles, but it's not very strong. The hardware cloth is stronger. So this stuff is way more predator proof than that stuff. And yeah, we just slowly added, slowly built, and slowly improved every year as we could, to the point where we have a coop that I'm confident is secure and can house about 40 chickens. I think that the basic getting into chickens, I think as long as you have a desire to provide the best you can and continue to improve and continue to make progress and keep learning, then it's not any harder than any other kind of pet. When I first brooded chickens, I brooded them in a back bedroom, and I didn't even have a heat lamp. I actually just had the thermostat in that room set to the temperature the chicks needed to be at. And I didn't use wood shavings on the ground either. I used dirt from our garden. So I made it work because we weren't at a stage then where we could just go, oh yeah, it's fine, I'll just go buy a bunch of bedding and buy a brooder and get a lamp and all these things. I didn't have that yet. So we were very basic. We set up the thermostat in the room to be the temperature the chicks needed. We adjusted that each week. And then the bedding in their little brooder box was just dirt. And we just continued to just trade out the dirt like every couple days or whatever to keep it fresh. So that's how I brooded my chicks my very first year. It was just very simple. And making it work with like what you have. Trevor had built a doghouse for a dog that we had at the time who never used the doghouse. So we decided, well, we have this awesome doghouse that's already built, and we converted that into our second coop. And then the rabbit hutch was actually one that was already at the house, because it was when, back in forever ago, we had rabbits when I lived there. The first house that Trevor and I lived at in the city was the house I grew up in. We rented it from my mom when she got married and moved across town into her husband's new house. So we rented that house, and there was already a rabbit hutch there because I had rabbits when I was a kid. I know in this current economy and everything, the price of eggs are really high. And so I know there's a lot of people now that are like, well, I'll just raise my own chickens for that. Which, coming from somebody who had chickens for a long time, I got chickens because I wanted chickens as pets. Not primarily as pets, but they had a huge benefit to the lifestyle that I wanted. So I primarily was more excited about the idea of having chickens like on a country property, just roaming around and being adorable, and I just thought that was awesome. Not only the awesome, like, they forage and they get, they do all kinds of good stuff for your soil and stuff. You can compost their manure for your garden, so we already had a garden, and so that just kind of worked together. And then also food scraps, like Trevor and I, just the two of us, we try not to make too big of meals so that we're not wasting stuff. But every once in a while, you just kind of get burnt out on something, and before it goes bad, I mean, we don't eat it up. We're not going to feed it to our dog. So where do we go? We feed it to the chickens because the chickens are the best garbage disposals a farm could ever have. I know pigs are probably up there too, top 1 or 2, but chickens are phenomenal as far as food waste goes. So I primarily got chickens because the entire thing, like everything that involves in chickens. And I guess I'm an advocate for everyone getting chickens. I think chickens are awesome, but I don't think everyone really is cut out to um, care for chickens. Just like everyone's not cut out to have goats. Sometimes people aren't cut out to have dogs. Like they just, doesn't work for them. And that's fine because there are a lot of people in your neck of the woods that probably have backyard chicken. And so if you still want the fresh eggs and know where your eggs are coming from, know what the hens are being fed that produce the eggs for your family, then seek out those local farmers because they'll be more than happy to sell you eggs. Because as I was starting into chickens, I actually didn't start selling eggs until years later because it wasn't really a thing yet. People didn't have backyard chickens when I got them. It was only like a year or 2 later, once they had made them legal for the city, that people started owning them and started actually giving away or selling extra eggs. At that point, I was actually just giving them to family or selling them here and there, maybe, but mostly it was just like Trevor and I were using them. We didn't have a lot of hens, so we just kind of used them up. And then if we had like get-togethers and stuff, I'd make like deviled eggs or something and just use them up that way. But it took a while before I started getting people regularly interested in buying eggs from me. And then ever since, I want to say it's only really been the last 4 years that I've had more consistent people wanting to buy eggs. And so then just each year I've slowly increased my flock because I want more chickens. And if I can sell the eggs, then it just gives me another reason to like not I can't just hoard chickens without the eggs going somewhere because just the two of us, Trevor and I, don't eat enough eggs for us to have 40 chickens. So we just kind of slowly built up clientele, I guess, friends, families, coworkers, a bunch of people just in circles that we knew. And then they started regularly wanting eggs from us. And so we started consistently making sure that, we try to pasture our chickens as much as possible. We try to give them as much natural life as possible. And we try to buy the best high quality feed that we can afford. We don't go and get those fancy premium, like crazy blends, but we still try to get stuff that has good herbs or good protein balances. And we also give scratch grains and all kinds of scratch grains, sunflower seeds, black soldier fly larvae from Grubterra. They've provided a couple bags to us to try out and they are phenomenal. The chickens absolutely love them. And so we try to mix it up and vary their diet so they're getting as much as we can. And that's where I think people think, oh yeah, it's cheaper to just raise my own chickens. But it is and it isn't, I guess. It can be cheaper if you enjoy what you're doing and you don't mind spending the money on your chickens. But if you're purely in it to have egg producing machines, chickens aren't egg producing machines. They are temperamental. They are very depending on situations. So for example, chickens typically will lay when they turn about 5 to 6 months old, depending on your breed. Your more egg-laying geared breeds will lay earlier, so like leghorns and things like that. And then your bigger breeds like black copper morans and barred rocks, they're a little heavier, and so sometimes they need to grow a little bit more before their body's ready to produce that egg because they're a bigger breed. And especially black copper morans. Sometimes they take up to 8 months to start laying. So the turnaround's not very fast. They need to grow and mature before their body's ready to lay eggs. the first year of eggs are usually pretty small. Like, you're not going to get giant whoppers from pretty much anything unless they are a specific egg-laying breed. I've seen this with ISA Browns, with any sex link cross, black sex links and red sex links, and I've seen it with a few sapphire gems, but not all sapphire gems. I keep a few sapphire gems in my flock because they are pretty good egg layers, and they start out relatively big, but not all breeds do that. You're going to start getting eggs that are small at first, because that chicken has to mature into making that egg, those giant eggs that they have the potential for. And every breed is different too. So there's that. So it takes them about anywhere from 5 to 8 months to start laying. And then they will lay typically through their first winter. But by their second winter, they stop laying eggs to molt. And then they won't pick up again until the weather warms up and it's springtime. So if people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to have egg laying factory and I'm going to, you know, they always say, oh yeah, I'll just put a light on the chickens. Okay, well that only works for a while because the chicken has to have a break. They have to regrow feathers. So what ends up happening is people will be like, oh yeah, I'll just keep my chickens for like a couple years and then switch them out for new chickens. Okay, that's great. But in the meantime, if you're keeping a heat light or a supplemental sunlight in their coop, you have to have it to a specific amount of time. It can't just be on 24/7 because that's going to stress out your hens. And I guess if that's not something you're worried about and you're like, it doesn't matter, stress will make them stop laying. So if your hens are stressed, they will stop laying. So that's a problem. The light also can help, yes, because they need at least 12 to 14 hours of daylight for their pituitary gland to trigger them to start laying. So if you keep a light on them, it can make them lay. Great. But that means they're not going to get their natural break in the fall and winter. They have to regrow feathers. It's just something they must do. So if they're not getting their break when nature dictates it, they're going to take a break when they dictate it. So you might have a light on in your coop and your chickens are laying throughout the winter, and that's great. Come springtime or summer, all of them stop because they're molting. And now you have chickens that are molting in the peak times, spring and summer, when people are wanting eggs or demanding eggs or even hatching out chicks, and now you have nothing because your chickens are on a break. So that's why sometimes the lights can mess with their natural laying cycles and stuff. I don't do it. I actually only have lights in the run, and I put lights in the run as a safety measure as well, because it's a lot easier to come out and look into the run and see that everything is okay instead of having to come out here with a spotlight and check on everything. So I do have lights in the run, but it's mostly just safety for the chickens. It's not inside their coop, so it doesn't really affect them as far as light cycles and sleep cycles and all that stuff. Selling eggs, because I have a good client base, with selling eggs, with selling chicks, and all of that, it probably helps make up for what we feed them in the winter when we're not getting eggs and selling anything or much of anything. But for the most part, I think we're lucky to break even on our chickens. Our farm fund is usually a conglomeration of everything we pull from our farm, and that includes the goats and the chickens and any other crafts or things that I happen to make. All of that kind of incorporates together. Making as far as income from the chickens is going back into the chickens. And that's what should happen, I guess. A lot of people think, oh yeah, they'll live in a cardboard box in the shed and I'll just rake in all the dough. But that's not going to work out because they They won't lay if they're stressed. They won't lay if their specific nutritional needs are met. And they won't lay if they don't have enough daylight. So it's not really like a heavy income based thing. And then people are probably going to say, well, what about factory farms? What about those people that, produce eggs for a living? Okay, well, we're talking factory farms. We're talking like they are set up and geared to get as much eggs as possible from a chicken in its first year of life. And that's pretty much as long as they keep them. I've had chickens that were 8, 9 years old. We rehomed them to other farms so we can make room for more birds when we've bred and kept others. But factory farms are usually only keeping their hens for a year, maybe 2, because those are the best production years of a chicken's life. After that, their production actually goes down quite a bit. And if you do put artificial light on them, their production goes down even faster because they don't get a natural break. They just lay constantly and then they're done. They're burnt out and they're of no use to the farmer in the factory farm. So that's why if you're wanting to get chickens to provide your family with good, fresh, quality eggs that you sustainably harvested, you're feeding your hens, you're providing for them, and you're making a good life for your chickens, then I think that's great. But if you're wanting to get chickens because you think it's going to be a quick buck, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised with how much it actually costs to keep chickens. So I also think a little bit of if you can't keep chickens, just support a local farmer. We're more than happy to provide delicious fresh eggs to your family. We're thrilled. And you can shop around. Some people are very much into the hype of like whatever is popular, like that's what I'm going to charge. I try to make my best estimate to help mitigate the feed cost. But I'm definitely not trying to just charge the high prices that the grocery stores are charging, because there's a lot of things that go into it. But I'm not trying to price gouge people. I'm just trying to have people pay what's fair so that I can turn around and buy feed with that money. That's all I'm going for, is just to try to break even to offset that feed cost, what I'm putting into the birds.
I like it. There's a cute kitty.
What other questions do you have for me? I like answering questions.
Yeah, you do.
Starting with any kind of animal, it can be a rough go at first. Like I lost a chick, but before they were laying, I lost one of my first chickens due to a dog attack. And I thought they were safe in my backyard. Yet this Springer Spaniel decided that it could jump the fence. So that was a surprise to me. So I think the biggest thing for people when they're getting into chickens is protecting them. They're every predator's favorite food. And the worst predator, especially when you're living in urban environments, are actually other people's dogs. Because chickens are exciting and fun, and they're a toy that runs away. So why wouldn't a dog chase that chicken? And then as soon as that chicken is no longer fun as exciting, they move on to the next chicken. So they can get an entire flock, because they're not hunting like a coyote would take 1 or 2 chickens, like however many it can stash in its mouth, and take off with them. He'd take them back to his den for his pups, and that's it. You'd lose a couple chickens to a coyote, but then he'd be back because he'd know where the food source is. So over time, you'll lose a few chickens here and there if you don't secure things down. But a neighbor's dog will just keep playing with your chickens until there's no more playtime. So that's probably the worst for urban environments, is just protect your chickens from people's dogs. And during COVID, my mom's neighbor's chickens got taken out by a raccoon. Because I guess um, everybody was like so quiet, like um, the streets weren't as busy as they had been. And so a raccoon got into their coop, and they live in the city. So that was a random one. But you just have to be prepared for all things. If you can build a coop that's safe and secure, lock them in it every night. But then you're going to have to get up and let them out. Another thing to keep in mind is chickens aren't quiet. People are going to tell you, oh yeah, this breed is quieter, or this breed's more calm, a little bit more quiet. Every chicken is an individual, and breeds do have a tendency for this, that, or the other. Some breeds have a tendency to be quieter. Some breeds have a tendency to be very loud and boisterous. And it's not just the roosters. The hens. So hens get really excited when they lay an egg for the day. And they will squawk, 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 squawk until, announce it to the world. And that is actually a very loud thing when you're living in an urban environment. Can you think about all of the vinyl and wood fences, the houses that is going to bounce off of? It's going to be loud. Hens are actually quite loud. They're a little quieter when there's a rooster, because the rooster is the loud one. So they balance each other out. When you have a rooster, your hens tend to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more calm. They don't fight amongst each other because he keeps the peace. But if you don't have a rooster, one of the hens is going to be the loudest hen, because she will be the boss hen, and she will squawk and carry on, and she kind of like takes that role of a rooster without crowing, but she's going to be loud. Well, I was just thinking that I'd cover where obviously chickens are every predator's favorite snack, Yes, they have wings, but they're not really good at flight. They're kind of like grouse or pheasants. They're good at burst flighting. And the smaller or lighter your chicken is, the better at getting vertical they will be. The bigger and heavier your bird is, they will not get very vertical at all. So they're pretty much just sitting ducks when it comes to predators and keeping them protected. But also, a lot of people don't realize that chickens, the ones that can or figure out, say your neighbor's 6-foot fence, you're like, oh, that's good. They can't get over that 6-foot fence. Well, they figure out there's a food source on that side, like freshly fallen apples from an apple tree. If they aren't fat birds, they definitely can get over that 6-foot fence, and they will be in your neighbor's yard eating their apples. So, some people will clip wings, and clipping wings is just fine, so they don't take off on you. But I only clip wings when I have a problem out here, because if the chickens get where they're not supposed to be, it's not really a big deal. It's only if they get somewhere that they can't get back. So I've only had to clip wings maybe once or twice, and I only clip one side because it makes them uneven, so then they can't get as vertical. But going along with that is chickens can escape. They can get into your neighbor's yards. If you're not locking them up every night, or they're not trained to return to their coop, maybe they're going to return to the trees. Then you go fish them out of the trees and put them back in the coop, because that's the safe spot. There's also chickens get sick. Chickens suffer from weird quirks and ailments. So if you're planning on getting chickens, it's nice to be a part of a chicken group, and not bagging on Facebook. Facebook is a great place, but usually there's crazy people on Facebook. People that don't know anything about chickens, they're going to chime in because everyone has Facebook. I recommend finding those online websites that chicken like people are like more vetted. They're like, oh, I've had this much years experience or this much years experience. A lot more people who kind of know what they're doing to chime in to help you. But the best resource is somebody who has chickens and who's been taking care of chickens for a while. Pick their brain. I'm more than happy to help people start out with chickens. Like, ask me your questions, like, oh, what is this a problem? Is this not a problem? That way you don't have to go out to Facebook and get ridiculed by the crazy people on there. Just ask someone like me, ask a neighbor, a friend. We're more than happy to share our knowledge because we want you to be successful. So, just like, I don't know, any problems that arise, like instead of turning to Facebook and you know, maybe you'll be a laughing stock, or maybe, who knows, maybe someone else will have a similar experience and it will be all great. But I just feel like Facebook's not the best resource as far as like questions and problems, because you don't get the best answers. I would say ask a friend, phone a friend over phone a Facebook. Probably the last 7 years, I think it's been, is when I first started hearing about bird flu. So it's not like it's a new thing. Bird flu's been around for a long time. I remember when I was in high school hearing about avian influenza, and it then kind of just got brushed on the rug, and it was fine. But since being a chicken owner, I've been aware of bird flu, and basically my knowledge on bird flu is very basic. But what I know is the typical cases of bird flu is coming from migratory birds. So usually when they migrate south for the winter, they're picking it up and bringing it back with them. And it is just something that is spread amongst the wild populations of birds. I know that it's more prevalent and heavy in waterfowl, so like ducks and geese and swans, all those guys. It's way more prevalent in them, but any bird can get it. So the biggest, I guess, concern or tip or thing to be aware of is, can wild birds access your chicken areas? Obviously, you can't keep all wild birds out of everywhere. I mean, we have sparrows that love these trees. We have starlings and magpies that are in the pine trees. We have owls here at night. We have doves. We have all kinds of birds. We have partridge in our pasture and pheasants out on the canals. So we have wild birds everywhere. And yeah, I guess if I was being absolutely chaotic about it, I wouldn't even walk into my chicken coop in shoes that I'd walked under the trees. But I'm not taking it to that extreme. What I'm doing is I'm keeping the wild birds out of the congregational areas that my chickens are mainly inhabiting. So making sure that the wild birds can't access your chicken runs, can't access your feeders, and can't access your coops where your chickens are spending the majority of their time. That's going to definitely help mitigate the risk. But I know people who have gone bird hunting, who have gone duck hunting or geese hunting, and they're trudging around in the wetland areas in like a muck boot. And then they come home in their muck boot, and then they walk around their farm in it. And I am an advocate of biosecurity. I think being aware of where your feet are and what they might be in contact with and what you're going to be bringing back to your farm is super important. Anytime we go to visit someone else's farm, I take clean rubber boots that go to that farm clean. And when they come back to my farm, they get cleaned again, bleached, because I don't want to bring anything from their farm to my farm, because my farm is kind of its own, this is its own ecological sanctuary. So all of my animals here are used to what's going on here. So I'm conscious and aware of where I go and what shoes I wear, because I don't want to go, say I go to visit a friend's house who has goats and chickens. I go and look at her animals and, you know, check out, I'm just wherever I'm going. Those shoes that I wore at her house, when they come home, they come straight off and go get bleached, and they don't go walking around my property. Because whatever's on my shoes, who knows? I could be tracking a virus with me. I could be tracking a parasite. I could be tracking who knows what. So just being aware of that, especially when there's like this higher risk right now of bird flu. If you're going out fishing, the boots that you wear fishing need to be cleaned before they're on your farm. If you go on a hike and you go through a wetland area, don't wear your hiking boots out in your chicken coop. Clean those boots, bleach those boots first, and then they're safe. But I do have shoes that I will not wear on the farm because they are shoes that I wear out and about in the world, and they don't come on the farm. So usually my like regular everyday shoes are just in and out of the house, and that's it. And then I have my farm boots. They're coming in and out of the farm, and that's it. And then I have friend farm or visiting other places farm boots, and they go friend's house, back and washed before they go anywhere else. Because I think it's rude if I don't wash them and go to someone else's farm again, and then I'm tracking farm to farm to farm. So I always wash my boots if I go somewhere different. That's kind of like a random tidbit, I guess. But that's just something I was thinking because not a lot of people think about biosecurity. And I didn't think about it for the longest time either. It wasn't until a few years back someone was like, oh yeah, I went and saw somebody's goats. They had a disease that I tracked into my farm, and then her farm's goats had that disease. So that made those wheels turn. And I started thinking about that with all my animals, my chickens, my goats, all of them.
Perfect.
My hands are so cold. If you haven't noticed yet, I love my chickens. I love my farm. I love all of this. And I definitely want everybody to have chickens. I think chickens are awesome. But chickens aren't for everybody. And so I think the main takeaways are if you are in love with chickens as much as I am, then chickens will be great for you. And don't think you have to go out and buy the Taj Mahal for your chickens right off the bat. Slowly build. Make sure they have a safe coop first, and a good coop. Some of the coops on the market aren't the best. So invest a little bit of quality in your coop if you're going to build it yourself or if you're going to buy it. And then, it's just kind of like treat them more as like a pet or a part of the farm / a part of the home life. And then, once you have them laying, that's going to be an awesome benefit to your family. And it is a pet that gives you eggs. Basically, my pets make breakfast. But then if chickens aren't for you, that's okay too. There are lots of us out here that would be happy to sell you eggs. And just check around and see who's got what and what they're charging. And if you aren't too far away from that farm, maybe you can become a regular customer. And then you can have farm fresh eggs for your family. And if you don't mind the high egg prices, that's fine too. You can still buy them from the grocery store. The only thing different is, the factory farms obviously are going to be the bigger producers of the eggs. There are still the niche farms that are still selling organic or pasture raised or cage free eggs in the grocery stores. And they just have to go through certain certifications and hoops to do that. So that actually tacks on quite a bit of cost. Especially like certified organic eggs definitely tack on quite a bit of cost because they have rigorous things that they have to do to be certified organic. And the other thing is the eggs in the grocery store that have all of the fancy like cage-free, organic, vegetarian fed, all of those tags sometimes can just be more or less clickbait because they're just getting you excited that their eggs are the best. But if you don't know, just look up that farm, look up that producer, and then that will kind of give you some insight into their practices because I just want to give you my insight into the vegetarian fed chicken. That's a silly term. That means you have a chicken locked up somewhere that you're only giving them vegetarian food, because if you let that chicken free range, they are not a vegetarian. They're going to eat anything they can catch. Anything. Any little bug, mouse, snake, whatever. They are tiny dinosaurs and they're going to devour it. So don't get into the hype of vegetarian fed, because that pretty much means they have to be caged up in order to be vegetarian fed, because they don't eat vegetarian. They won't naturally eat vegetarian. They have to be forced. I hate that tag. That's the worst one. That one probably annoys me more than the whole like cage free blah blah blah. Like,
so you're forcing them to be vegetarians.
Yeah, you're forcing them to be vegetarian. Don't buy vegetarian fed eggs. That's dumb. Organic, I could take it or leave it, because some of the hoops that organic farms have to jump through are kind of ridiculous, and then that cost is put on to the customer. Pasture raised are great too, because then they're getting out into like grassy areas, and chickens love greens. They will eat grass and plants and forage through and get seeds and peck through and get bugs and all kinds of stuff. And then, there's the backyard farmer like me. So I could probably be classified as cage-free, pasture-raised, farm-fresh. I wouldn't say organic, because there's a lot of weird hoops to jump through with organic, but it's locally sourced feed. But yeah, I want everyone to have chickens, but maybe chickens aren't for everyone, even though chickens are awesome. But they do make really fun pets. They can be very personable. Chickens actually can recognize over 100 different individuals. My chickens typically recognize Trevor and I, and that's why they're usually pretty chill when it's just us. They recognize the dog, they recognize the cat. Some chickens are okay with the dog. Other chickens are a little bit more freaked out of the dog. When neighbors' dogs come over, which their dog does escape sometimes and comes over here, and the chickens are all up in arms because it's a dog that they don't recognize. They are visual. Chickens recognize you by your face. They know who you are, so they can be very personable. If they're raised in small groups, especially if they're handled often, daily, they will be like little pocket pets. Like, I'm kid you not. They are so personable and they can be so sweet. So having chickens as a pet that just happens to give you eggs is probably the best thing when you get into chickens to start with. Just having a pet with the bonus level being eggs. Well, I know this was kind of a little bit sporadic and all over the place, but I just wanted to make a video to just like throw out all the information I could possibly think of, so that you guys can make the best decision if it is something you want to do, adding chickens to your household. And I sure do love it, but I wanted to just throw out all my knowledge or experience or anything. And of course, like always, do your research. Ask a lot of people, ask a lot of friends, check out a bunch of those like backyard chickens websites. Just see what's going on, maybe have like a plan in place if you were to get chickens, like what kind of setup you would have. Look into how people house things, look into brooders, all of that stuff. That way you guys can feel a little bit more ready if you do decide to bring chickens into your household. And don't forget to ask me your questions. Like I said, I'm more than happy to help people with their chickens. I love chickens, and chickens, I feel like I can confidently say I know quite a bit about chickens. I wouldn't say I know all the things because guess what? I'm constantly learning. Even after having chickens for decades, I'm constantly learning. And I enjoy it and I love it. So ask me your questions. If I don't know, I'll find out for you because I'm that kind of person. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out our other videos about chickens. And we will see you guys next time. That's too hard of a question.
There's a kitty.
Hi, Katie. That's a really hard question. So I got into chickens
This
purely.
cat, I can't even. Get out of here, cat. There's your snuffle butt.
Kitty, kitty. He needs to be part of this. Look, he got all my lap wet. Thanks, cat. That's so nice. That's so nice. All right, you hop down. Look at all of this. Cat tracks.
I think I can't see your lap.